Hey guys, this is Courtney from Cosmic Clay Astrology. We are here doing a special episode where we are specifically going to start diving into our audience's charts and analyze them based off of a specific subject. And today we're going to be talking about the 12th house. And I'm with two of my former astrology students that are now graduated and have their own practice. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure.
Sure. Hi, I'm Kristen, and I'm really excited to be here. Courtney's been an amazing teacher, and just really excited to talk astrology today.
Beautiful.
And my name's Leah, and I am one of Courtney's former students. And yeah, I'm just excited to be here and dive into the 12th house.
And if you guys really like our reading style today, I will link our websites, our information about how to book a reading in the description box down below. So don't forget to check that out for any of us. And I hope that you guys enjoy this. We are hoping to do this every month by picking, again, random people's charts. We're each going to look at one for maybe, a few minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, and answer your guys' questions. So if you want to be included this, make sure that you do comment down below and check out my channel. Make sure that you are looking at the posts that come up because that's where I will write about this and you can submit your chart to be read. So I'm going to start off. This is my client. I'm just going to keep her anonymous for now, but in this session, we're looking at the 12th house. Of course, we can't look at anything in total isolation. So this chart is a great example of why you can't do that, actually. This individual has Scorpio in the 12th house along with Uranus here. And this Uranus, which is kind of hard to see because there's so many aspects going on in her chart. This Uranus is making a square to her moon and north node, which is also squaring Chiron here. And that's also squaring the south node. So we have what we call in astrology a grand cross, all in fixed signs. So this would be a fixed grand cross. So this is something that we call an aspect pattern. And it definitely shows something about that person's character in a certain way. With this being a fixed grand cross, one of the things that would immediately come to mind is some rigidity around change. And it's interesting because Uranus is a planet of change and it's in this 12th house, which has so much to deal with the subconscious. And planets here are usually not as integrated into our life or into our psyche. And so, if the planet of change and individuality and uniqueness and rebellion and differences is kind of pushed off to the subconscious, it's much more likely that an individual like this might kind of go along with the flow a lot more, with maybe what other people think. They might not always recognize when something isn't in alignment for them, or they might feel like they have trouble fully recognizing their own differences or when they need to change something in their life. So, this fixed grand cross to me is showing me that it's more likely that this individual will maintain maybe certain relationships that aren't healthy or certain habits that aren't healthy for longer than they should until things kind of build up. It's interesting because Uranus is in Scorpio, which in medical astrology relates to the toxins of the body. And so it's almost like things can build up, build up, build up until they kind of have this massive purge, which is what happened during this individual's Uranus return, or sorry, Uranus opposition. Um, and we're going to talk about dates and stuff like that in a second for this person. So one of the things that I would see with this is, of course, when have you, or one of the things I would ask my client is, when have you maybe held on to something longer than you should have? And this is especially important because not only is this Uranus planet in the 12th, so not only is this element of, again, change and individuality not fully integrated into the psyche, but it's also squaring the nodes, which does represent that this could have been happening even from their past lives, if that's something that you believe in. In evolutionary astrology, planets that square the nodes indicate something that was an obstacle or a skip step from that lifetime. And So what I'm seeing here is that there's likely something in that past life where they maybe had something shocking happen, which is kind of common with Uranus in the 12th. Something sudden happen that made this individual maybe disassociate, which is a very Uranus and Aquarian theme, and disconnect in many ways from their heart. So, one of the things that I would guide someone with a chart like this is to try to kind of connect more with their moon and north node in Leo, which is trying to, again, kind of connect more with their heart and what feels really important to them. And to try to process maybe some losses or things that have happened in their life, especially with Saturn and Mars together. I'm guessing that there's something that may have been challenging for this individual with a placement like this that can, again, cause one to kind of leave their emotions or just associate in certain ways to not have to feel that. And one of the issues with it, with a chart like this, with the South Node being in Aquarius and the Sun and Venus in the 7th house, is there's a really strong pull towards kind of identifying with the group or with people or with being, a little bit more of a people pleaser. And if we are dissociating from how we feel around certain things, and we have a tendency to really listen to other people or even be deceived by other people with Neptune opposite Venus, we might be more vulnerable or susceptible to the influence of others and kind of like lose sight of what our North Star is and what we really feel and what we really want and where we're headed in life. And so I feel like this individual has gone through a lot and again has somewhat maybe dissociated at certain times or had trouble kind of with the shock of those experiences, and at the same time has a little bit more of a propensity to maybe not have proper boundaries within relationships, to maybe listen a lot to people or give a lot to people or say yes and be influenced by people. And in that way, I think that this individual could have kind of lost part of themselves, which is what Uranus in the 12th can represent, where often in our childhood, we're not allowed to be our unique self in certain ways, our unique and individual qualities that are seen as, or some of those unique individual qualities can be seen as maybe negative or not supported or not understood. And so it's almost like we disconnect from part of ourselves and we become compliant and malleable. And so that's something that I feel like may be going on in this individual's chart, and why I think the moon and the north node are together. It's because it's about this lifetime for this individual is a lot about them gaining an understanding of themselves, their inner world, their inner workings, kind of processing and making peace with certain emotions instead of detaching from it or going into a relationship to avoid certain things. And especially with the sun in Gemini, there can be, and even Uranus in the 12th, especially Uranus opposite Chiron, there can be a tendency towards maybe overstimulation or engaging a lot kind of mentally in other people's lives or in other people's energies or in activities that can, again, disconnect you or disassociate you through busyness. So it's not always super clear. You don't always look like you're gazing off and super aloof to disassociate. You can just be somebody who's really busy or super engaged in relationships. So that is something that I would basically have if I was giving recommendations to this person, which I guess I am. It would be to, to do more of, I guess, the slowing down the inner work, really getting to know oneself and where in their life they might not realize that they were holding on past the point that was helpful for them. Um, as all these are, again, fixed signs in this cross. This individual is a Gemini, so I think at the end of the day, they definitely have the capacity for change and for this to not be for this to be a stepping stone in their life and to help them progress. And so one of the things that they talked about was during their Uranus opposition, which was quite recent. This started happening in like July of 2023. So a little bit before that, actually, when Neptune, let me actually go back to it. It was in June of 2021, this person said. So June of 2021, this individual had Neptune coming into a square with their natal Neptune and their Sun and Venus. And at this time, they made a huge change in their career that they had been in a really long time. And they also left their relationship that they had been in for a really long time, their husband. So this is really significant. Neptune transits aren't always going to indicate that, but with this individual having Neptune opposite the Sun and Venus, there is something about their life, which again, I feel like they might not always see things clearly when it comes to certain aspects of themselves or their career or their relationships with Neptune opposite these planets. And it could be that some of those kind of ideals that we might establish when we have a strong Neptune in the first house, where we think like, oh, I love this career, or I love this person and things are going so well. Some of those ideals can be challenged when we have Neptune come into a square between these opposing planets. And it can dissolve our attachment to things that are, again, maybe not what they seemed. So maybe that career wasn't supporting this person anymore, or that relationship wasn't what she really thought it was going to be. And some of those ties start to dissolve under a Neptune influence. What's really impactful is then when she comes up on her Uranus opposition, which is in 2023. And that's when I think the real truth kind of hits with Uranus. We're kind of many people associate a Uranus opposition with like a midlife crisis. And so ultimately, I feel like this is around the time when people start to see again the truth of something and they start to have these kind of major wake up calls. And sometimes it is through shocking events or shocking things happening, which for her, a few months before this, at the start of the year in 2023, she was diagnosed with a brain tumor, which is obviously a huge kind of wake up call. And this was happening sort of around the time Uranus was coming over Chiron. Chiron in medical astrology has a lot to deal with ailments. So often you will see Chiron involved when there's something serious or there's something that takes a little while to get rid of, or it's been building up for a long time. And so when Uranus was passing over these planets and coming into an opposition, she was kind of, again, having these major realizations about her life and about her health. And ultimately, I feel like this is again, a kind of wake up call of what have I been holding on to or tolerating or having in my life that ultimately is maybe toxic or not serving me, or is some kind of security blanket, or I'm ignoring how I feel because I'm disassociating. And so in general, that is, yeah, this is like a really big moment for this person. They're also going through a lot of other transits with Saturn that I guess I'm not going to really get into, but um, Saturn does make or break things a lot of the times with its transits, especially when concerning our health or certain endings in our life. So this individual is also going through that even right now. And they were asking me, what can I know or what can I do about relationships moving forward. She said that she got a new career started actually June 2024, which is funny because she's a Gemini sun. And that is when Jupiter moved into Gemini. It was June 2024. So a lot of Geminis started to get their blessings coming in that month as Jupiter moved into their sign. So so she's kind of got that settled. She's feeling like she's getting, better in terms of relationships and whatnot. Um, Finding friends in that, what I mean by that, instead of like romantic relationships. And she was wondering about future romantic partners. And so, with a chart like this, with Saturn still in this coming into this opposition with Mars and natal Saturn, this is usually the time when we can feel a little bit maybe more thwarted or frustrated. We can often have things come up relationally that are somewhat challenging, or maybe even career because it's in her 10th house, like headbutting or having just certain delays in life. So it's really not the most ideal time right now to start a new relationship under, energy like this. However, this is going to be completing itself basically in like March of 2025. And in that summer, right after that, Jupiter will then pass over her sun and her Venus. And then even like the spring and early into 2026, Jupiter will pass over her Mercury, which is her relationship planet since it rules Gemini. So during these periods of time, I'm feeling like kind of spring, all the way really through 2026. I feel like this time is going to be a good time to focus on relationships. But from now until then, I think it's important with Saturn coming into a square with these planets to get really real about boundaries within relationships and understanding these patterns that you may have tolerated. I think also understanding where there could have been this stubbornness or this holding on energy within this individual's life, and that needs to be reckoned with, that needs to be thought through in order to understand how certain situations built up as much as they did and kind of released around this Uranus opposition. And it will help to integrate, one's individuality, one's differences, and, processing certain emotions around things in order for these relationships to succeed. And I did pull two cards that have to deal with, it says longevity and continuance. So I feel like there's something here, you know, whoever this reading is for. I think that there's something here with these cards that's talking about having to kind of think more about the long term and what you commit to and what your promises are, and take those things really seriously. Maybe this is your promises or the promises that others make to you, but there's something here with that where I feel like it's important to get a really strong dose of reality and understanding around the commitment to the long-term commitment to something before entering into maybe that next phase of dating or relationships. Like, this could be understanding exactly what you're looking for and will and won't tolerate, or really seeing those patterns and understanding that you don't want to bring them forward. So you're going to do X, Y, and Z in order to work on that before you make such a lasting commitment with someone or get serious about something. So there's really just this energy here around things are moving forward positively. The future is assured, but it's also important to continue to think about the future in a really serious way. And I think that that's true for really everyone who has Gemini planets. With Saturn making a square to it, it's important for us to think about the long term right now, and how, again, how we have maybe certain behaviors that could be, uh, especially with Gemini, that could be more of kind of a spontaneous, or I just want to do this right now, and we're not really thinking everything through totally, or we're scattering our energy, and we have maybe we think something one day and then the other thing the other day, and we're having uncertainties and doubts, and those are all really common things with the Saturn square to the sun, so, and to Venus. So you might feel that way, like, oh, one day I want to date, and the next day I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm ready to date. So you might be kind of going through this period of really having strong or maybe kind of chaotic Gemini energy come out, and Saturn's coming in here as a test for that, in a way to help you think again more long term, and also more about yourself, like a little bit more selfishness with this North Node in Leo. So there's a lot to say. I'm trying to wrap up. I'm trying to say a lot in a little bit of time, but Uranus in the 12th ultimately is about accepting one's own individuality. This is even more important for this person because it's squaring the nodes, indicating that in their past life, there's maybe something that they didn't get to accept about themselves. And now it's time for this person to think more with their heart, maybe be a little bit more selfish, and also get really clear on how they need to step up in that way, so that their relationships and the people that they choose in their life will likely change and reflect kind of this new relationship with themselves. So, does that make sense to you guys? And do you have anything you would want to add to that?
It makes great sense to me. I mean, yeah, I was just eating up everything that you had to say, especially with the transits and everything that was going on personally. in her life. Yeah, I think you nailed it. I really don't have anything else to add.
Yeah, I mean, the charts are the chart there's so much to say in a chart in general. So it's like we could really go on and on, but if you guys have anything that's standing out to you, Leah, if there's anything about the 12th house you want to add, and if not, no worries.
Not at this moment. Yeah, I think that you nailed it. I don't know if I could really add much to what you said.
Okay, perfect. So who wants to talk next?
I can go.
Okay. So awesome. Up next we have Ben. So take it away, Kristen.
Okay, so Ben, he wrote in with a few questions about things pertaining to his 12th house. And so his 12th house is ruled by Cancer. And he had some questions about wanting to know how he could align with Venus in his 12th house and how it plays out. So since Venus is representative of how we value ourselves and how we value and connect with others through all our relationships, it's going to play out with, your values and the people in your life and how you connect with others. Um, in a man's chart, it's particularly connected to the women in his life, like his mother or wife or girlfriend. Venus represents blessings in our life, but if you have a more challenging Venus, those blessings have a harder time presenting themselves. And the 12th house, it represents, everything hidden and in the subconscious. And with Venus here, it could unfold with struggles of maybe difficulty with like self-love, self-worth, money, relationships. It represents what makes us feel worthy and what our love language is. And so Cancer will show your love language and the type of partner you attract. So with your Venus in Cancer, you are likely a sensitive lover who expresses your care through nurturing, and you do well with earth signs or other watery signs, since there would be like a mutual emotional connection and understanding in the partnership. It's kind of like your elemental love language in that way too, just this more of a feeling place. So you can thrive with a partner who is not afraid to love deeply and who can commit, because Cancer is very much so the family home, being steady and having something sustainable. And you might prioritize your family or at least quality time at home. Could be an important love language for you in finding a partner. The 12th house is kind of like the mysterious, hidden, subconscious, deep oceanic energy. And so with Venus in the 12th house, your love life could be as deep and mysterious as the ocean. So you might not wear your heart on your sleeve, but rather you keep it protected like in a treasure chest, and you don't want to reveal it until you feel safe and secure to do so. Your approach to love with the extra watery energy of Cancer might be kind of tender, nurturing, and deeply emotional. You might have a need to protect and care for your loved ones with a tendency of putting their needs before your own. And this makes you incredibly selfless, but can also be a bit detrimental if you're filling up everybody else's cup before your own. Um, your South Node in Libra is squaring Venus. Well, so Venus is squaring the nodes, your North and South Node, but with your South Node in Libra squaring Venus, this could bring more challenges out pertaining to filling up others' cups before your own, an attempt to keep peace and harmony in your relationships. And I think, learning to lean and grow more into the energy of your North Node in Aries, by like getting your own needs met and filling up your own cup and being a little bit more autonomous and focusing on your individual selfhood could be beneficiary to your relationships, because if you're loving yourself more and not like the narcissistic way, of course, but it's like in the healthy way of that. It could really magnetize good, healthy relationships into your life. Let's see. What else did I write here? You have a need to protect and care for your loved ones. And your evolutionary path is to get your own act together. So I think like you're wondering how Venus plays out and in the 12th house with your relationships. I think it's like in this life, especially with your North Node, your North Star in the direction to kind of like evolve into, it's turning your focus more towards you. So throughout this life, you may be forced to resolve issues with depending um on others, and people in relationships and where that codependency can happen. So in South Node, in your South Node or your past life, if that is something you believe in, perhaps you are focused on others, meeting their needs rather than focusing on your own. And it's possible because of this like Cancer energy there too. That's something you might be playing out again in this life. So now your life path is calling for you to depend on no one but yourself. And in doing so, you will magnetize healthy relationships that are free from codependency or self-sacrifice. With Venus in 12th house, you might have a tendency to retreat into your shell when you feel threatened, unsafe, or insecure. This can make you seem aloof or unapproachable to potential partners. But once you let someone in, you're all in. You love with your whole heart and expect the same in return. But sometimes maybe with that 12th house tendency too, you could perhaps put others on a pedestal and kind of have like rose-colored glasses on too when it comes to other people. So just to be mindful of that. Venus in the 12th house, your love life may be marked by periods of solitude and introspection. You might find yourself drawn to relationships that require some type of sacrifice and selflessness, maybe caring for a sick partner or maintaining like a long distance relationship might be some examples of that. These types of relationships can be challenging, but offer you growth emotionally. Maybe that's something like to work through in that way. But yet you might not be the best at defining your boundaries. So that could be something that could be helpful if relationships are a struggle for you. Let's see. And when your needs and your partner needs are separate, you can get hurt in love maybe very easily. Okay, so Venus in the 12th house can represent a deeply felt connection within you between your artistic abilities, your values, and the spiritual and unworldly. You could be naturally attuned to higher planes of reality and do not connect well with like the mundane reality of life. You probably like to live life in your relationships and in the dream world. You are likely extremely sensitive to the energies of others around you and maybe have a lot of psychic abilities. You might be easygoing and perhaps too easygoing at times. And you might feel you might see or feel the magic in someone that others are not willing to understand. So you're always maybe perhaps rooting for the underdog, which is, something, it's a good quality to have. And then Ben also asked, why does Mercury in his watery 12th house, which is double watery Cancer, affect his ability to communicate and has always been a challenge? So with Mercury in the 12th house, you're all about deep emotional and intuitive communication. It's more natural for you to express through feelings rather than words. You might be like an energy sponge and constantly picking up the energy and emotions of those around you in whatever atmosphere you're in. So it might be kind of hard to differentiate what's yours and what are other people's. But your psychic antenna can pick up the frequencies all around you. With this placement, your communication style might be very subtle making it challenging to communicate with others who use and need a lot of words to understand you better in their expression. It might be easier and more preferable to you to communicate in more nonverbal ways, maybe showing how you feel instead of speaking how you feel, through ways of art or music or just by your presence with others. You communicate through energy and not words. However, you can be really skilled at writing. So maybe writing could be something very beneficial to you, as it can allow you to process and take your time conveying your thoughts and feelings through words in written form, as opposed to if you struggle with communicating, um, you know, speaking to others. Writing could be a good outlet for you. And it's likely that you are a phenomenal listener, taking in everything and picking up people's emotions and conversations. And I'm guessing you make a really excellent confidant. And you can be very discreet, and secrets can go into your vault. So I'm sure you have people who come to you whenever there's any sort of issue. And some other aspects in your chart that I thought was to note really quick. Your sun squaring Jupiter, and that could bring up a bit of a challenge in some ways, but it may lead you to like overextend yourself. So it's important that you use your balance of energies when, again, kind of going back to that Aries North node of, you know, trying to take care of yourself and not overextend too much. You In this like overextension, it could cause issues and maybe like ending up not looking at the details of stuff, or, very kind of like Cancer thing is also like in excess of like food and stuff, and you might make commitments that are beyond your capacity. Um yeah, so I thought that that was an important thing, and I feel like you have a really um fun loving nature to you, especially with like Gemini being your sun, and Leo being, your moon and your rising. I feel like you have like a lot of good fun energy to share with others. So that's what I have. What do you think, ladies? What would you like to add, if anything?
Yeah, I love that. I definitely want to add some stuff. So you were talking about one of the things that you mentioned was like I think you mentioned dependency as one of your themes with having maybe South Node in Libra or Venus in Cancer. And I definitely wanted to, reaffirm that, especially with the South Node so close to the IC, which is the home and family line. And with Cancer being so much associated with our family. And then the moon also being the planet that's in charge of all this Cancer is at 29 degrees of a sign, which is super important. So all these things to me are indicating that there's quite a lot of energy here directed towards maybe attachment towards the family. I'd be like you mentioned, especially women, because Venus has to deal with women. So I'd be interested to see the mother in particular. Um, if there is any kind of like dependency on the mother, or what your relationship is with your mother and how that could be impacting maybe in some ways your ability to like have the right kinds of relationships, or have the right kinds, not the right kind, but the kind of forward momentum within your career life, because Venus also rules your midheaven, which is your career. So having this planet squaring the nodes, I think, again, like you mentioned, brings up stuff from past lives, just like my chart. It's interesting that we both had that, where these themes could have been happening from a past life. And again, there could be some strong kind of intertwined energy with the mother, especially, where I do wonder how that affects um affects you. And I feel like there's this really strong desire, especially with Cancer being the 12th, to just feel loved and to feel nurtured. And the moon is in this loose square to Saturn. And that really screams like, I want to feel appreciated. I want to feel admired. I want to feel loved. I want to feel accepted. Like, please accept me. And that's why I think the moon is at 29 degrees of Leo, because Leo just wants that respect and admiration and doting. And with this being at 29 degrees, it makes me wonder if that was either something you got too much of or didn't get enough of. But the relationship here with like being loved by one's mother, one's family, that I think is kind of at the origin of a lot of the disconnect that you might have with your Venus, which then translates into, again, relationship disconnect or career disconnect at certain periods. And like you said, moving towards that Mars or that North Node in Aries, and then by extension, Mars, which rules Aries. I almost feel like Mars, especially in Capricorn, which is exalted in, it's like this kind of daddy energy. The word daddy kept coming really strong. Like you being in your daddy energy, you're already a guy. So I don't know. It's like maybe needing to have a little bit more of this like firmness in that way with your Mars and Capricorn. And there's some kind of disconnect here between that side of you and your maybe more like social relational side of you, because your sun in Gemini quincunx is this Mars. So there's some kind of disconnect maybe at times with this kind of like firm routine, super schedule, super discipline kind of daddy energy, and like that part of you that really respects yourself. I feel like there's part of you that's doing that, but then maybe not all the time, maybe not fully enough, um, because of this kind of enmeshment or, lack of love, or maybe there was so much love, uh, in regards to like the women in your life, especially. So I don't know, this just screams to me like very, very much the things that you experience in your life are from your family. I mean, that's the case, I guess, to everyone to some extent. But with the South Node being so close to IC, it's like you probably reincarnated with the same family in this lifetime. And then you came here to have some really peak experience with them again, playing out the same issues. And it's like with the North Node being in Aries, it's not about them in this lifetime. It's about you. It's about you being, again, in your daddy energy, maybe a little bit more selfish, like you were saying, Kristen, really focusing on like taking care of yourself and your needs. And there's a lot more to say, but if you want to like look more into your chart, definitely get a reading with Kristen. And also you can look up, what a kite is, because you do have a kite in your chart, and you can see that visually. So yeah, really, really great job, Kristen. I loved everything that you said. And yeah, I think exactly also what you said about that Jupiter sun. I can see you maybe like being a bit ungrounded at times with this kind of energy, like overly generous, like you said, overextending yourself, like you said, Kristen. And I think that daddy energy, which is like, this is what I'm doing, this is what the boundaries and limits are, this is like the plan, I can only spend this much, this is my budget. It's like all of that kind of firm, practical, earthly energy is going to suit you so well to get the most out of your Venus in a way. And like create a lot more of that self-respect and self-love, which I think in many ways can help enhance your relationships and move your career forward with this Venus squaring your nodes. Thank you so much, Kristen. Leah, did you want to share anything?
No, that's great. Kristen, great job.
Thank you. And daddy energy. That
That's going to be the name of this
energy.
video.
Yeah, I love it so much. Daddy energy. And I think also because it being in the, sixth house, whatever his job might be or something, maybe at work,
Yeah.
he brings that daddy energy, or he might struggle with,
Or workout, and he's like super, I don't know. But yeah, I just hear zaddy, like with the okay. Anywho, thank you very much, Kristen.
Thank you.
Okay, last but not least.
There's more daddy energy in mine as well, in my chart. So this chart, this is Joyeuson's chart, and the first thing that I noticed was that he has Pluto conjuncting his moon in Scorpio in the 12th house. And this aspect, or sorry, this placement is called the Hades moon. It's also known as the hell moon, and it's an extremely difficult moon to have. The Hades moon is when the moon is either in Scorpio, or it's in the 8th house, or the moon is making a hard aspect to Pluto. So that would be either a conjunction, an opposition, or a square to Pluto. And he has a double whammy of a hell moon. Not only does he have the moon in Scorpio, but it's in conjunction to Pluto. So as soon as I saw this, I thought, wow, this is a very intense relationship with his mother. And also, I noticed he has this isn't making an aspect, but in the 4th, 8th, and 12th houses are very spiritual houses. And for him, he has the 4th house, he has a Jupiter in Pisces. It's not very close to his IC, but still in that 4th house, I feel like this to me confirms that there's something very spiritual, very spiritually powerful that has its roots in his maternal line. I noticed that the Pluto in Scorpio was making a very tight square to his Leo Venus in the 9th house. And this made me feel that, you know, with a Venus in Leo, that's a very outgoing, exuberant kind of energy. But making a square to his Pluto in the 12th house, it feels like it's sort of like this Pluto moon aspect is sort of oppressing or having a repressing effect on his Venus. And he did mention in his email that he when he was younger, he had like social anxiety issues, and now that he's older, he feels like he's okay with more going on his own and having more solitude. And I can definitely see that, like with having the Pluto moon in the 12th house, you know, that would be a very powerful, he would have such powerful emotions and a lot of fear to do surrounding with that square to Venus. It would almost be like a fearfulness surrounding socializing, because Venus is, it's our love nature and it's how we socialize, right? And it's social feelings. And in the 9th house, having Venus in the 9th house and having Venus and Leo in the 9th house, it makes me think of someone that's very open-hearted and open-minded. Someone that would probably really enjoy travel, enjoy other cultures, enjoy philosophy. And, you know, just having this tight square to Pluto, there'd be something that would be holding him back from fully expressing that Venus. There'd be fears and maybe issues surrounding control. And I feel that for him, it has its root, as I mentioned, in his relationship with his mother. You know, I don't really know. It just to look at it, it just feels so like Scorpio is such a dark, it's such an intense energy. Also, I noticed that the Jupiter, which is Jupiter in Pisces, is its domain, is in its domain, and it's also making a really nice trine. Jupiter 21 degrees Pisces. It's making a really nice trine to Cancer in the 8th house. Cancer Mercury at 21 degrees. So I feel like this is giving him a very beautiful ability to transform in his mind through very sensitive, like he has a very sensitive intuition. So it's not a shock to me at all to hear him say that he doesn't mind the solitude now that he's older. He enjoys being in solitude. I think that when he's in solitude, he's able to transform and transmute any like these plutonic emotions that he has. So I can definitely see this is someone that can almost heal themselves when he spends time alone. I think he has like a very deep spiritual nature. And you know, again, I think this is coming from the maternal line. Perhaps this is ancestral. Perhaps he has ancestors that had spiritual gifts. They were very compassionate people, or very creative, imaginative people. But yeah, I think overall it's a very interesting chart. And you know, and being in the 12th house as well, having a moon and a Pluto conjunct in the 12th house, I don't know if he would be very aware of all of the darker emotions, the darker emotional nature he has. Well, perhaps he is, but it's hard to know. He does have his sun in Gemini, 27 degrees, and it is squaring that Jupiter in Pisces in the 4th house. It's not a tight square, but it is within 8 degrees, so I would consider that a square. So it makes me sort of think that these gifts that are coming, these spiritual gifts that are coming from his ancestors, the maternal line, it's sort of almost like it was sort of overwhelming to him as an individual. And maybe also being his sun in Gemini in the 7th house, it's almost like he wasn't always recognized. And the women in his family, or the mother, or not just the mother, but all the women in his family, it's hard to know. But like, they were very dominant. They had a very dominant presence in his life, to the point where maybe it was overwhelming to him, because as a Gemini, this is air. So I feel like he's more of a cerebral guy. He's more of an intellectual guy, more lighthearted. In air, that's a more lighthearted mental energy. So with all this water, and especially having that Hades moon, Scorpio 12th house, that's very intense. Like, I wonder if there was issues of control with his mother. Like, maybe he felt like she had all the control, and she was sort of a dominant figure, perhaps domineering, or there was something going on that was, perhaps being in the 12th house, he's not even fully aware of this. Like, this is unconscious for him. So there's something going on in the relationship with his mother, or perhaps it's not even his mother as a personality, but the way he related to his mother, or the way he perceived his mother. There's just something very there was a control, what do you call that, like a power struggle going on. And it could have been something that was it wasn't spoken of directly, openly, so it got buried there in that murky 12th house. Yeah, powerful chart. I noticed that his south node is in Libra, and his south node is 28 degrees Libra, and that's making a very tight trine to his sun in Gemini. I think that he's bringing with him from past lives, like this, it's a focus on the other, having his sun in the 7th house in Gemini, and then that tightly trining the south node in Libra in the 11th house, makes me think that he's coming from other lives where it was about relationships. It wasn't really about him. So it makes me think that he's experienced that in this life too, where, you know, his mother or the women in his family were very dominant. They were dominant women with dominant personalities. They sort of, and with the Leo Venus there too, representing his mother could have been like sort of larger than life, and a very like, you know, it was sort of like all about her, like all eyes on her, the spotlight's on her. So, you know, he sort of got, I don't want to say forgotten, but looking at this chart, it makes me think of someone that it just was not about them, you know? And with his North Node in Aries, in the 5th house, this life, it is about him. It is all about him. It's about him reclaiming his joy. What makes him feel joy? What makes him like expressing himself? In the 5th house is about self-expression. So he's to concern himself with his own needs, his own self realization, his own joy. And the ruler of his North Node is Mars, and that's in Capricorn again. Daddy energy, big daddy energy, right? In the 2nd house. And okay, big daddy energy in the 2nd house. And yeah, Capricorn, it's in the house of values. So he's meant to value himself. And really, yeah, take that big daddy energy and lay down the law. Maybe he has to really sort of, be like, to his mother or to the women in his family, is put up the boundaries and say, I'm an individual. I'm doing things my way. He spent previous lives, you know, acquiescing to other people, right? Like taking a seat and allowing other people to have the spotlight and allowing other people to have control. Now, his Mars in Capricorn, he is to take charge. That's that's a take charge Mars in Capricorn. That's a boss energy. He's here to be the boss of himself and be in control of his destiny and be in control of himself, and to value his big daddy energy. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that, ladies. Would you guys like to comment on that?
I'm loving so first of all, BDE, Big Daddy Energy, is also synonymous for something else.
I know.
Okay, all these charts feel like kind of similar. They're all
do.
Geminis.
I
Mhm.
was thinking that same thing. We all chose Gemini charts, and
Yeah.
then uh
Yeah, what's up with
Leah and I
that?
chose somebody who are literally only 5 days apart.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah,
So
you
Beth, June
ve
13th, 86, and Jay is June 18th, 86.
yeah, and
Crazy.
they all the charts have some strong nodal stuff going on. So
Yeah.
clearly the Geminis, Jupiter is in Gemini, so of course we chose them. That makes sense. Yeah, I definitely want to add some stuff here. I absolutely loved everything that you said. You guys are both amazing, by the way. I think
Great.
that one of the things that I often see with Moon Pluto individuals is you mentioned like intensity from the mother. I have a friend who has this who recently said, going through a loss, that she felt like she had to hold her mom's emotions, but her mom wouldn't hold her emotions. And I think that that can really speak to this Moon Pluto experience, is that that mother archetype or someone within the household, doesn't always have to be the mother, but usually it is, kind of like takes up all of the space, or like emotionally, that's the intensity can come from their emotional or psychological state. And so it's almost like, yeah, I think it very much relates to the North Node being in Aries and this Mars and Capricorn of feeling almost like I need to have my separate sense of self. There's so much going on here with this person. They're just emanating emotions and they're drawing me into it. And where is there space for me, especially with the moon in the 12th house? We can
Mhm.
sometimes have this kind of disconnect oftentimes from ourselves and our own inner world until we're alone or we're separate and we can go kind of within our own shell and explore deeper. So especially with Pluto there, it might take this person some time to fully figure out like why they're feeling certain ways or process what they're going through with things. Moon and Scorpio can already take time, and then you add Pluto in the 12th house there, and there's a lot of mystery around that person's inner world. And it could be because if the mom has this larger than life presence, like you said, these massive emotions, or maybe she's going through something where she's having, psychiatric illnesses or something. And it's like everything is about the mom, or they take up all that energy and all that space in the room. How do you have time to have that inner awareness and self reflection if you're
Mhm.
kind of devoting that to the parent, or if they are pulling you that direction? And so it makes sense why an individual with a placement like this would do quite well alone. Especially, Moon and Scorpio people already tend to do well with fewer relationships that they really trust because, Scorpio, especially also Pluto squaring Venus, has a similar theme, can have issues around vulnerability and trust and really letting their guard down. And there can be usually ties to the way that their parents were with them growing up that creates that. I think that one of the things I would warn a client about if I saw this in their chart was there might be so much outside of your awareness that is a psychological pattern playing out in relationships, because when we have Pluto and Venus involved, usually we're playing out some BS from our family, from our past. It's like, and it's not always easy to see that and have awareness of that, how we're projecting things onto them, or how we are, again, kind of getting stuck in a rut or a cycle with people, especially around, the Plutonian themes, which can sometimes involve like third parties in our relationships. So cheating or not having trust or feeling uncertain around people or jealous or wanting to control situations, or maybe even isolating ourselves because relationships are so intense for us. So a lot of these like deeper psychological inner workings are likely to play out in this person's relationship. And so I can see why they would want to have some separation and time alone, especially with also Uranus on their ascendant, which creates a lot of individuality, kind of uniqueness, like we talked about in the first chart reading. And that automatically can make them feel different and separate from others because of that. Also, with having Chiron on the descendant on the relationship line can indicate maybe having some wounding that plays out in relationships. And so it feels maybe better to be alone at certain times. And the social anxiety piece, it's interesting because it's interesting that you mentioned that like earlier in this person's life that was a thing for them, and then they kind of went off on their own, and now that's not as much of a problem. But when I look at Mercury typically relates to kind of that childhood experience, like when we're in school and we're getting to know our peers and we're trying to establish our initial relationships with people. This is our Mercury in action, and he has Mercury opposite Mars. Mars is often a planet of anxiety, and sometimes like competition or conflict. So I can see how maybe those really early years, maybe there was some kind of like bullying, especially with Uranus on the ascendant, maybe being different, or maybe this person just had anxiety, so that's how it played out. And this could even come into their work relationships because Mercury also rules their 10th house. So I wonder if they're like competitive at work or ever have issues with people at work. So this is kind of like a butting heads or anxiety type of energy within relationships, within that early childhood or the workplace. But like you mentioned, Leah, is this beautiful trine to Jupiter. So that's almost like, especially Jupiter in the fourth house, I wonder if there's something within their family, like these family relationships that have always felt really close to them, and have felt like, oh, maybe I don't get along with everyone at school growing up, but I come home and I have such a strong like family unit, or I have just something going for me within the home that feels like I'm really supported and really loved. And especially in Pisces, like a lot of, like a soft place to land type of thing, even though the mother could have these intense emotions, with Jupiter in the fourth, that's going to take a lot of the edge off in terms of like how that person experiences it. So I think, like you said, maybe a lot of it is largely subconscious around how they've been impacted by their family growing up. And with Jupiter in the fourth, they could see maybe some of the more positive traits and be like absorb a lot of that, which can help them socially as well. And so we can't undercut, like Mars is still there and Jupiter is there, which indicates that there can be something here that causes anxiety around relationships or conflict in relationships to a certain extent. But then at the same time, there are also ways with Jupiter being a Pisces that relationships work really well for this person. And so this is a beautiful part about astrology, is there's always that kind of oxymoron, or contradictions within our own chart. So yeah, and there's of course even more you could say because Mars is also the ruler of the North Node. So quite a bit here, but I think generally there is probably a little bit of this conflict, which you can see resumed with South Node Libra, Mars and Aries, North Node and Aries, of is it going to be about the other person or is it going to be about me in this lifetime? And generally, it should be about you, that daddy energy, like we talked about, especially with Mars in the second house of money, really focusing on creating a lot of autonomy and financial security for yourself is what's going to help you thrive and maybe feel safer in certain ways to be who you are and to open up in certain ways. Um, and with that Uranus on the ascendant, really accept your uniqueness and individuality. So just riffing off what you guys are saying, but do you want to add anything else, Kristen or Leah, before we wrap up?
I just wanted to comment that Jupiter is also his chart ruler.
Mm.
And he does have a day chart, so it's also his chart ruler is Jupiter, and it's also the benefic,
Benefic. Mm-hmm.
benefic for a day chart. So this Jupiter, Jupiter and Pisces in his fourth house, it's really beautiful. Like I can just feel there's something really beautiful that is coming from his family somehow, and his maybe in his childhood home, like you said. And the way that's connecting to his Mercury, it's just in the eighth house. It just makes me feel like he has these beautiful emotions and thoughts and intuition. And I think this is somebody with a beautiful spirituality.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels very magical.
It
Like there's
does.
there's something, there's probably just like these innate gifts from him, like from his lineage, his family, that it's just like expansive magic that he carries. So
I'd be curious to know. I hope if I know he'll hear this. He said he's really interested in listening. So I'm curious to know, can he tell us about the women or the people in his family, like grandparents, great grandparents, aunts, uncles, mother, father, like what spiritual gifts they have and what they were like. I'm interested.
Yeah, definitely. I could absolutely see that too. A lineage of psychics and maybe also people that don't even know that they have that. Or
Hmm.
they don't fully like capitalize on it, I should say, and own it externally, but maybe they have a clear, strong intuition around things within the lineage. So I definitely see that.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. So where can people find you if they want to connect with you, maybe on socials or get a reading from you or ask you a question?
uh
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Kristen.
so sorry, I feel like I keep cutting you off, Leah.
That's
Um you'll link it, right?
Yeah, I'll
Uh,
link it.
So you could either email me at thehealinghutcda@gmail.com or find me on Instagram at the.healinghut or healing.hut on Instagram. But it'll be written.
Say that again. Say that last one again.
The period healing period hut. And so that's where you can find me on Instagram. And then there's a link there to a booking that you can do with me there.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you can find me through email. My email is Leah.McGeeya@gmail.com. That's Leah, Leah, .McGeeya, McGeeya @gmail.com.
Okay. Wow, your name really rhymes there. That's cool.
A family
Like, yeah.
nickname. That's
I
not my
love
real
that.
name.
That is so cool. Okay, guys, thank you so much. If you enjoyed this, please let us know down below. If you got a reading from us today and you want to add in any context, please share it with us in the comments down below. I'm sure everyone would appreciate that. And if you want to be included in the next reading and we can pull you at random, then again, please be sure to watch out for my posts on YouTube because I will be requesting charts there. Don't forget to check out our websites, which will be linked down below, our emails, and I hope that you guys have a beautiful day.
Have a big daddy energy day, everybody.
See you later, ladies.
Bye.